the key is stillness, whatever that means. Welcome back, Mere Mortalites, to another round of the Mere Mortal book reviews. And I am back, and I have got another Ryan Holiday book to review. I've got Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, the man himself. If you have been keeping track of at least my book reviews, which have been almost once a month at the moment, just in terms of, life just hitting me. I have been reviewing and reading a lot of Ryan Holiday's books. I made it a part of my annual goals to go through to the majority of his books, especially around Stoicism. And so Stillness is the Key is the third one, after the obstacle is away, and Ego is the Enemy, which you can go check out the other book reviews as well on this channel as well. So Stillness is the Key, and if I'll give you a bit of a synopsis first around the book, which is very similar once again to the previous two inceptions of Ego is the Enemy and Obstacle is the Way. So just as a key piece of insight, Ryan splits us up into, once again, three different sections. Those are the mind, the mind, the spirit, and the body, which is quite nice because it's a trinity that I use as well in terms of my eminent human being qualities and breakdowns. So I thought, wow, this is awesome. And it's intermingled with very brief chapters. It's sort of Ryan Holiday's go-to, it seems. This is similar ways that Stephen Pressfield writes as well in some of his books, where it's short, sharp, 3 to 4 pages around a particular idea or thought. Just to give you an example, when it comes to things like the mind, there's aspects of the domain of the mind, becoming present, limiting your inputs, emptying the mind, slowing down and thinking deeply, start journaling, cultivating science, seeking wisdom, finding confidence, avoiding ego, letting go, etc. And also has similar sort of concepts across spirit and body as well. But the principle, or what's talked about predominantly in this book, is stillness, and around how stillness across a great set of individuals, historical, notable figures have utilized stillness across all those different aspects. And in all of these chapters, Ryan actually starts it off once again with a quote by a particular person, again with a story of that particular historical note or historical figure or notable figure, how it applies, whether it's positive or negative towards stillness, how the concept really plays out and its theory, and then what you can go and do about it, tying it back to the story. So it's the tried and tested method from Ryan Holiday in this book. So to a little bit of an idea around the themes, right? And again, I've hit this already with stillness, but I need to talk about it in particular with the definition, just so we're absolutely clear. So within the actual definition of stillness, folks, is the absence of movement or sound. But it's not in particular the theme that stillness is used in this book. And so really what I kind of came away with is that for this context, it's the ability to act out an action or goal you have without being perturbed by an internal or an external force. So as you would read through this book, or if you're just listening to this book review to understand what the book is about, you'll find that a lot of these stories and a lot of these ideas are, being able to be present or able to do an action that you want to do without internal forces or external forces from taking over, from some swaying you. And that in the split there of the mind, what are some things that you can do mentally to allow yourself to be quite clear from a soul perspective? What are the things from the virtues that you carry, the values that you carry, to be quite still in the moments when you need to make really tough decisions. And it's sort of tied up in that body last aspect around, hey, what are the sets of things that you need to do, sleeping, eating, training, etc., so that you can be still, so that's sort of how it carries through across those three ones. The book also ties up at the very end, as it usually does with Ryan, with a bit of an afterword around how this very much applied to his day-to-day life and where he's seen it play out, and maybe some of the challenges as well that he has seen, although he scatters throughout that as well. But let's dive in more particularly into the three areas, right? Because in my initial view, I thought, I'm gonna really enjoy this. Mind, soul, and body. This is very apparent and very parallels the things that I do with my breakdown. I'm gonna really enjoy this, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I felt about it, and we'll talk about it in my takeaways and thoughts sort of at the end. But really, the themes here. So let's begin with the mind. it was really around emptying the mind, around being present, and around journaling. So I just talked through all the different sort of groupings there, but it's basically that. It's around being able to put down, thought to paper basically, or to empty the mind, or to not allow external things to really shift where your mind may be lying, in particular to an action. Then I'll go down to the soul aspect. And this one was the part of the book where I thought it was going to be it was interesting, but I wanted to understand, is this going to be something where I'm going to be taking a lot of notes and a lot of learnings out of it? And I took away some interesting things, but perhaps not exactly that. So again, some of the examples here is around healing your inner child, beware of desires, enough, and we'll come back to enough. And enter relationships, as well as accepting a higher power and conquering your anger. So a lot of the things around the spirit or soul, which tie in with that. And the final one with the body. So this is, again, being able to move, taking a walk, saying no. And this is saying a no from a bodily perspective, a presence perspective. Being a human being, not a human... being a human being, not a human doing, as it's described in that particular chapter. Finding a hobby and going to sleep. So, these are pretty, at least for myself, I've read these in a lot of other contexts, but they're summarized in a particular way with, again, comparisons to historical notes and why you might want to be doing something towards being a still human being. So let's actually just jump into takeaways and personal thoughts around this, because they might be a little bit longer for this particular book. So I touched on the enough and entering relationships, especially in this spirit section. So I'm going to start there. Because throughout the book, the mind part I really enjoyed. It hit exactly the strings that I wanted to, and it was playing the melody that I desired. But as I go into the spirit, I lost a little bit of juice in reading this, first of all. But two, I found there was some chapters where I not just, and often this happens, I will challenge some ideas of what I'm reading, and I'm trying to put through objective thoughts as to why. Maybe I've had different experiences, maybe I've read elsewhere. But in the relationships aspect, and maybe something that I found or stumbled across throughout the whole book, is the definition of things. So the definition of stillness and what that really means. And I explained at the beginning what I thought he was trying to get through, rather than the actual definition of stillness. Sort of mess around with some of the chapters. And in Enter Relationships, it really talked about almost the requirement or the need to having another person or another partner to really find true stillness in the end. And I want to bring up a particular quote from that, or piece of the chapter, just to give you a bit of an understanding around what I mean. And it's towards the end of that relationship, which actually takes up, unlike the others, it's quite a long chapter. It's a very long chapter. So, he talks about to go through our days looking out for no one but ourselves, to think that we can or must do this all alone, to accrue mastery or genius, wealth or power solely for our own benefit. What is the point? By ourselves, we are a fraction of what we can be. By ourselves, something is missing, and worse, we feel that in our bones, which is why stillness requires other people. Indeed, it is for other people. Now, I get the concept of what he's saying here around that written on its own. Maybe I can conceptualize it, but the way that it's presented through different areas of the book with stillness, I go, well, I disagree, or I could see ways where that's not the truth. If you, as I understand it from stillness, you want to be able to take an action without external or internal forces sort of forcing your way. You don't particularly need relationships in a way. You can be a monk sort of practicing, on your own action somewhere without any other human interaction, and you can become, extremely focused in being still. I don't think the relationship actually plays too much of a factor on it. However, in reading the chapter, it almost read to me like stillness was slightly different concept that was being explored. And I found that a challenge through not just this chapter, although this was the most apparent, but through a lot of the rest of the chapters. And for me, it was perhaps a definition thing that was missing, as opposed to it being completely wrong. But I lost a little bit of mojo while reading it. Now, inversely, the chapter of enough. Now, I want to make sure that we get this correct. And enough was, again, in the soul area, I should say. And that one takes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages, right? So 8 pages of enough. But I found this particular chapter to be one of the most crucial, one of the key pieces of the book. And for me, like where I got the most learnings. And I went, this was a fantastic chapter. In fact, I would have wished it could get longer. It could have been explored even deeper. And then there's little glimpses of real greatness that Ryan Holiday writes. And I found that portion of enough. I wish it would have been longer, and other areas like the relationship piece almost took away from it in the sense of like, well, you just explain a great concept with a particular mindset and idea, and Ryan's pretty crucial with explaining to detail the things that he writes, but then kind of goes off a few pages later and changes in another chapter. I'm not going to say it's I won't assume the way that this particular book was written or whether it was done in different chapters, but it almost for me just like the continuity with the understanding of what we're talking about being stillness is the key. So that was just a bit of another thought that I had as well. And finally for me, the final piece of body. Now this is I am biased very much so on this aspect, and that's because I do enjoy consuming a lot of information when it comes to body, right? Sleeping, training, eating, macronutrients, you name it. I'm really into it. I'm into all that. And so the reading of this, while again placing it against notable humans and notable happenings and historical perspectives and the like, and why you should be doing things, I went, yep, that makes sense to me around stillness as a key. Again, with that challenge around what is the concept of stillness here that you're trying to sort of put forth in each and every one of these chapters and ideas. But it almost just felt like it wasn't interestingly enough in these chapters for me. Like I read the aspect of the sleep or the walking, and it is a very broad concept. It's a understandable concept, but I didn't particularly get much out of it and much juice. And to me, I almost went, oh, could I almost just skip this part? I kind of get it. I don't need to see it put forth in an example of why sleep was good for stillness, for the president or for Oprah or for whoever else. Kind of seemed sensical to me. I'm not really picking up anything wonderful here, but I read it through to the end in any case. So for me, I guess it fell maybe where I was expecting more detail than I already have. However, if you're coming into it quite fresh and not having read a lot of these aspects, and particularly how it might apply for stillness, it might be quite a wonderful read for yourself. So look, in summary, there's some bias as there always is with us humans, mere mortals. But I gave Stillness as a Key 6.5 out of 10. It's not like the previous Ryan Holiday books. I couldn't see myself going back and rereading this. I think there were some challenges with the definition of stillness in the end, and made me question the book sometimes in a way that I probably don't want to be questioning it around. Wait a minute, you said this and this other aspect. What are you trying to say in this other area? And in some, I almost felt like I wish it could have been deeper in one area as opposed to some other areas. So for me, not probably a book that I'm going to reread. And if you do go, look, would I recommend the book for you to read? I think I would recommend it only if you absolutely adore the rest of the Ryan Holiday books and you feel that the concepts of body, mind, and or spirit, mind is something that you probably across the board will take quite a lot of learnings and an enjoyable piece out of it. If you find that you're, I'm not going to say an expert, or you're well-versed with the body, or you're well-versed in the mind aspect when it comes to stillness, you're probably not going to pick up too much extra from this particular book. So those are my 2 cents when it comes to this particular one. So that has been my review of Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, an ancient strategy for modern life. Let me know what you think of this book if you have read it, or of the book review as well. As always, we are a Value for Value enabled podcast, just as our main Mere Mortals podcast is. So is the book review channel. So if you do want to send through any boosts, feel free to do so. And we read those out on a monthly basis as well, as we do a summary, or Karen does a summary as well. But for now, I'm going to leave it like that. Stillness is the Key. I hope you have enjoyed. One out.